Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Had a fun day today. Have some really good friends that came into town and brought their family. They have some young kids and they got some older kids, and went over to the Montana Vortex. It's a really smart family, and got some older kids that were pretty much blown away by the vortex. It was a lot of fun. We sat around, talked about what happened there, and it's always nice being around younger people sometimes. I mean, really younger, and hear their interpretation of what's happening in our world from outside their bubble. And the vortex really did that today for them. I told them that before we went there that they were going to see some things and experience some things that they never have before. And Joe and Tammy Hauser hit a grand slam with that family. And it was the perfect introduction to Skinwalker Ranch today. I can only say that I'm sure that family's head is spinning. So, this is a review of Skinwalker Ranch episode for June 28th, 2023. And I was jazzed. I was really jazzed. I like the show a lot. And kind of the way I do this is Angie and I sit on the couch. We watch the episode. I take notes. I'm usually saying things out loud to her, like, "Oh, hey, did you see that? Did you see this?" We kind of bounce back and forth toward each other, explaining what we thought about certain aspects of it. This one brought together several aspects that I loved. So, previous episode, Jeremiah Pate did some special work at the ranch, and Travis said that it was the best evidence yet that there's a wormhole at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I know that some of you may not believe that. That's fine. I don't care. But there's a multitude of physicists that say it's true. And today, I don't know, sometimes you hear something so many times you don't really hear it. Well, right at the beginning of this episode, the narrator said, 20 years the government tried to find answers and failed. Well, hold your taters there, Mr. Narrator. I don't believe they did fail. I think they found something that, according to what some of their spokespeople said, was demonic, and they didn't want to touch it, and they left. So that isn't failure. That's probably smart thinking. So right away, that got me going. And then the first part of this episode is they go to the top of the mesa. How many times have they gone to that mesa? Drill from the side, drill from the top. I think this is 3 weeks of drilling from the top. And the driller said that they got down to 24 feet and the drill started to chatter. 25 feet, chattering stopped, engine seized. They said it locked up. They said it was a new motor, and it was dust. Okay. There's a lot of very hard substances in our world. Rocks, various types, granite, diamonds, a lot of really hard stuff out there. But when you're going at it with a drill, there's minute particles that come off the hardest of substances. I don't care what you're drilling. The point being, when they pulled that drill out, if you were paying attention, There were particles on the head of that drill. I told Angie when they pulled it out, "Whoa, stop everything." They should have swabbed the head of that drill, taken that swab, put it in a plastic bag, sent it off to the University of Utah that's done a lot of work for them, Brigham Young University, and define what was on the head of that at a microscopic level. I can't believe they didn't do it. And when I see things like that are so basic, because I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, I don't understand why Travis didn't do it. Now, here's what I thought probably happened. Travis said it. And you know what? Swab that, take those particles, let's send it to the lab, see what's on there. And then maybe it came back as some mundane substance that didn't play well in the section. I don't know. But to think that they didn't do it, that's pretty basic, folks. I don't understand it. And maybe there's some reason that stupid me doesn't get. I'm just saying. And that was really the only section I thought that I could add much to this. Then they talked about a guy named Burdett Anderson, high-speed camera expert. Now they caught the team caught an anomaly in the sky in 2021. In 2023, they found a column in the air, some kind of invisible force that actually pushed the helicopter around. You remember watching that. They decided that they were going to do a frequency test. And John Dover from the Navajo Rangers came with some drummers. If you watched the premiere of my movie, John Dover was in it. Now, just a couple weeks ago, I spent an entire day with John in Arizona. We had a great talk. Super smart man. Very humble person. Has great knowledge from Native American world. And he was a kind of like a fish and game ranger for the Navajo tribe for an entire career. And he was assigned to investigate certain weird stuff. Bigfoot, flying saucers, all kinds of things for the Navajos. And boy, John and I talked about a lot of stuff. But really, the essence of my conversation could best be found in the interview I did with him at the premiere for Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And bringing him back, even though he had a very small role in this segment, John added a lot. And he, on one of his earlier Skinwalker episodes, talked about this kind of like formation of rocks on the mesa. What it was, a circular pattern that slowly gets smaller as it goes to the center. And when I talked to him about it, he said there's a lot of negative energy there, Dave, which is exactly fits into what the government found at this location. Now, we'll go more into this as the segment goes on. They were going to do frequency testing to see if they could get something in the anomaly to work. And John has talked a lot about his people seeing UFOs fly into rocks. Now, if you study frequencies, there's been a lot of work done that certain frequencies can actually levitate items. And there's people that have done work with huge boulders. And the rumor has always been that the way they move these boulders was with certain frequencies. I think what they're doing now at the ranch is they're on target to do something good. They start playing different frequencies to see if they could get this anomaly in the air to do something. Namely, if it was a portal, they wanted it to open and they wanted to see something. I'm guessing. So they have a high-speed video recorder, carries 2,000 frames a second. That is so fast. And then they had a tone generator that produces sound, and then a spectrum analyzer. The idea is they're going to shoot a rocket up into the sky while they're playing this music. Kind of double disruption to what's going on. So they shoot the rocket, and by gosh, on this high-speed video capture, just seconds after they shoot the rocket, they catch this object that looks like your standard UFO flying across the sky at an enormous speed that if you were watching with your bare eyes, you'd never catch it. It'd be gone. And what it was, it went a half mile in 1.12 seconds. And Travis said that's the fastest UFO they've seen at the ranch. It went out over 6 seconds after the launch. And the calculation is, he made it just out of his, without a calculator, but he said it was around 3,600 miles per hour. And he said something that I was thinking, and I swear it was coming out of my mouth when he said it. He said something that fast, disrupting the air, should have made a huge sound. If it was a jet, you can't get going nearly that fast, but you'd hear a sonic boom. But what it meant is that it was a frictionless flight. And that to me is really interesting. How can you move through the air frictionless? Let's go back. USOs, underwater submerged objects, just like UFOs but in water. There's been a theory out there that the reason these USOs can move so fast, and submarines have captured them going by at enormous speeds in water, that doesn't even make sense to them because a submarine can't even approach 1/10 of the speed that they're going by at. There's a theory that some way or another, they move the water that's ahead of them as they're going. So when this thing is going through the water, it's really not. It's going through air that's been moved out in front of it. So there's no friction, object against water. How they do that, they don't understand. But they're only confined by how fast they can move that water ahead of them so they can move through it without friction. And in water, there's much more friction than there is in air. These are important points. But Travis hit them, which was good. He brought up another good point. In past seasons, they had a dead cow that was on the property. They scanned up, and here's this UFO sitting up there. And they were wondering if the rocket or certain sounds bring in these UFOs that are over the dead cattle, or that flew by right after the rocket and right after the sounds. They did a second experiment. Just tones and frequency, no rocket. And then they were trying to find the frequency that caused the disruption. The first one was, Travis said, almost like a tinnitus sound that you'd hear in your ear. And there was a second tone and a third tone. And when it happened, I said, that resonates with me. Angie goes, yeah, me too. It was a very deep tone. Travis said he could feel it in his feet. And then for a brief second, a UAP was seen in the sky and it vanished. And then they reminded us that John Dover stated at one of his previous episodes at the ranch that the indigenous used frequencies to open portals. Right. Now, how would indigenous people know to use frequencies to open portals. Where did they learn that from? We didn't know it, and we think we're so smart. But how did they do it? Did the sky people tell them? I don't know. Best part of the whole movie, or the whole segment. Jonathan Dover arrives with a group of Native Americans. They're drummers. A group called Blazing Bear. The group was from a variety of tribes, not one, a variety from Oklahoma. What they were going to do is get there and sing ceremonial songs to just see if it could resonate in the area, that boom, 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 that drumming. They were going to play in the East Field. And then they brought in a thermal imaging expert, a man named Dave Mason. It's almost as though, in this experiment, they knew what was going to happen before they did it. Yeah, it's just my opinion. I don't know why I felt that way, but I just did. And I'm not sure why they had a thermal imaging expert there, because what they captured could have been captured on a regular FLIR device. Here's what happened. 7 or 8 drummers sitting around a drum that's in the middle of them, and they're all pounding on the drum together, chanting. Well, they played in the sun, then they played at dark. And once the sun went down, they're drumming. And the FLIR is on them and the spiraled rocks out in the mesa. And as they're playing, the spiraled rocks that represent a portal start resonating heat. So they go from cold to warm. Now, Travis said that was amazing. But he also said we'd have to replicate that 1,000 times before I'd believe that the sound was heating up rocks 300 yards away. So, was A causing B? I have no idea. But it kind of appeared that way. And then when they stopped playing, you could see on the FLIR how the rocks started to change color again, and it appeared to cool off. Now, one of the frequencies that they appeared to have some effect on the object in the sky and on the spiral rocks was 192 hertz. And when they were doing the test with the rocket and when they were doing the drummers, they found that the drummers also were putting out a sound at 192 hertz, which apparently had a reaction to the spiral rocks. Now I'm going to say something. I almost hate to say it, but I'm going to be honest with you. That's my promise. About this time, Travis is interviewed back in the studio, and he's talking. It was the first time ever that I thought he was reading something. It was the manner of his delivery, and at the end, the way he tailed off and finished didn't seem like natural communication and speech that you're used to from him. It seemed like it was read. I've told you before, I've never been involved in anything with Prometheus, who's making this show, where they had me read anything. Ever. That was the first time in this show. I thought maybe Travis was reading something. Now that's the end. That's not the end of the line. That's not the end of the moon. What you have is you have a group of producers and writers that want the show to go a specific direction. They want the show to exemplify something and you to walk away with something more than you had before you watched it. So maybe the producers wrote something up and Travis read it. I don't think it's demeaning, but I have to acknowledge to some of you that I've stated in the past, I didn't think he was, but this is the first time I thought he might have been. And again, I don't think it's the end of the world. And heck, maybe even Travis himself wrote it, just so he would understand and remember everything he wanted to deliver in that 2-minute segment. And then they reminded us, and I can remember this too from reading all the books, that when NIDS, the National Institute for the Discovery of Sciences, Bigelow's team, they had seen shadow figures up on a second-floor building where there was no second floor. So they're like suspended in air. 2 people had seen that. And that matched, supposedly, what the band members saw up on the side of the mesa while they were drumming. They said they thought they saw a shadow. And Jonathan spoke up and said, yeah, those are shadow figures. And we see them. I thought, whoa. And the shadow and the drummers got so freaked out, they said, hey, we're done. We want to leave. I respect that. And so did the team. And they sent the drummers back. Said, hey, we want you to come back and do this again, but we're going to send you home. And of course, the security team went up onto the side of the mesa and tried to find something. The only thing they found is where the drummers said they saw this figure. The FLIR showed a cold rock up there where every other rock wasn't. So did a figure come out of or go into that rock? Don't know. They didn't say that. I'm saying that. And why am I saying that? Because Jonathan Dover reminded us that his people and a lot of Native Americans at certain parts of the country have seen these UFOs go into rocks, solid rocks. It's not that unusual. In fact, there's been a lot of sightings on various UFO sites that have reported this exact same thing. So how can they do that? Well, that's $1 million question. So they went through a quick review, and I'll stop here for a second. About this time, I was about ready to pull my hair out because we were getting with ads. The ads were horrible. The worst I've ever seen on this show. I was getting frustrated because the show was losing its flow. And when a show starts to lose flow, they start to lose audience. And again, this isn't the fault of the team in the field. It's the fault of the editorial team that does the edits on the show and the production at Prometheus and A&E, who owns the History Channel, about how many ads they want to throw at you and how much money they want to make. Now, on the channel I was watching, there were actually ads for 1883, a spin-off from Yellowstone. We saw it twice tonight. That had to have cost Paramount an enormous amount of money to show ads on one of the higher rated shows on cable television. And to do it twice, it's a lot of money. So they kind of recapped what was going on. And the best thing that they showed that they hadn't showed before is when they're looking at the mesa and the Native Americans are drumming away, something at the very top of the screen came out of the sky and went down into the mesa near the top where they were drawing. And it kind of looked like 2 bursts of flashlight beams. That's kind of what it looked like. And one of the beams went, it looked like it was yellow in color, went down and right straight into the mesa. right near the top, not near where they were at the bottom. Second beam, I told Angie, I said, Angie, watch the second beam. As it comes down, it makes an abrupt left turn. So not both beams went into the mesa together at the same angle. One went out of the sky and straight in, and one of them came in, and right before it went into the mesa, made a left and then went in. I said, that's weird. We then went to another commercial. Travis comes back and says the exact same thing I said. He again didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't the exact same behavior 2 times. And then what is it? The better question is, are those beams coming into the mesa on a continual basis, but they're not monitoring it with FLIR all the time, so they're not seeing it? I tend to think that's the case. Now, I was with this family today. We had this discussion about our world and how it's probably not as easy to understand as our high school science class made it out to be. And even if you don't believe everything you're seeing in this Skinwalker show, I don't care. Fine. If you don't believe it, I don't even know why you're watching. That's a waste of time in my book if you think that way. I tend to believe all this stuff that they're showing. Why? Because I've heard it too many times from reliable sources. But why are these beams going into that location? What is there that's attracting them? But the even better question, who is saying that beams like this aren't going into 1,000 other locations around the U.S.? Because we don't know. We're not looking at mountaintops with FLIR 24/7. The anomaly may be much more common than we understand, but we don't have these high-tech tools at all these locations around the world to watch. But then again, maybe what's happening there is extremely unique. I'd say it's very unique. But I'm also not discounting that it's not happening in many other places. And I know that there are other places that has this unique occurrences, but what if it's 1,000 times that? And again, we just don't have the instruments to watch all these different mountaintops. And then they showed next week's show, sneak preview. They talked about using a flamethrower to go up to the 31 feet up in the sky and try to heat it up as much as possible. I don't know what I think about that. I'm afraid that may cause, in my feeble mind, it may injure this in some way. I have a feeling that if it was going to injure it, that it would act defensively and shut down the flamethrower. Just like it shut down the rockets that maybe were going through it at the wrong time and they made them veer off or they made them explode or whatever. But I have a feeling this thing can protect itself. It doesn't need Dave talking about it, or it doesn't need Travis doing something. It can take care of itself. So, that's the review for today. Hopefully you found it interesting. I'm always up for constructive thoughts. I know some of you got mad at me because I was being negative on a couple of episodes. Well, Dave, why are you Monday night quarterbacking the episodes and you think you could do better? That wasn't the point. You're watching this show because you want my opinion about things. And if you don't want my opinion, then you shouldn't be watching. As simple as that. And I'm no expert on how to put together a show. But I have put together 3 movies. And I have been in a 2-hour special with this company, Prometheus, called Vanished. And I was the executive producer of that. So I think I know how to put together a show to make it interesting, to make it flow. So, anyhow, I appreciate you being here. Be nice to your neighbor. Be nice to your friends. When you go out, smile at people. It doesn't cost a thing. And if everything's right, God's willing, I'll be back in 2 weeks because there's not a show on Skinwalker Ranch next week. Paulides out.